Hi everyone, my name's Logan Clements, freelance event producer, and today I'm excited to come to you with another installment in my series of my favorite tips and tricks about event planning and running your own business. This week, we're going to tackle my go-to questions when I'm learning about a new virtual event platform. Now, you may have noticed I've done a bunch of other videos talking more about virtual events, the differences. I'll link below to one of my videos where I really talk about how your virtual event platform is like your venue. So similar to how there are go-to questions you always want to ask your venue, I've come up with my go-to list of my questions when I'm talking to a virtual event platform. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the last couple months with all these virtual events is that not all platforms are created equal. Their pricing is different, their features are different, and a lot of times I'm seeing clients use a platform just because that's the first platform that talked to them without really diving in. So here are my go-to questions that I like to ask, and you should too when you're thinking about using a new virtual event platform. Now, before we get into it, I do want to remind you to subscribe below. Click that little notification bell so you get that little, I say ding it all the time, so ding it, turn it on, so you get notified every single Monday when I drop new videos. And if you like this content, feel free to like it, dislike it if you have something else you want me talking about, and comment below. Tell me what kind of virtual events that you are planning and what event platforms you're loving right now in this new virtual event world. All right, so today I'm going to share my go-to 6 questions that I like to ask virtual event platforms. And so what is a virtual event platform? A virtual event platform is essentially your virtual venue. So this platform would be where you're hosting your event. So right now, my virtual event platform that I'm using is YouTube. So you can host a virtual event all through YouTube. You can also use different virtual event platforms to stream onto YouTube. So there's the difference. That's a different virtual event platform that then streams to YouTube, meaning YouTube is more the streaming production partner or the production tool, but you're using something else to stream there. I've also seen a lot of virtual event plans that will use YouTube to show the content inside their virtual event platform. So some of the ones that I've worked with for virtual event platforms, I've seen Event Power is one I'm using with a client. Octria is another. Welcome is one that I've done a demo with, and I've seen tons. There's so many virtual event platforms out there, so I'm not going to dive into exactly which ones I like or dislike. I'm more going to talk about what I ask when I'm working with a client and helping them pick which one, because there's so many different ones out there, and there's so many fancy different bells and whistles you can get, and there's also a lot of really basic ones you can get, and the pricing is so different. You could pay several $100s for a virtual event platform, or you could pay upwards of $25,000 for a virtual event platform. Again, it's a virtual event platform, not a physical venue, so it's not the same as a country club and a warehouse, where maybe a country club, you get this gorgeous view and your attendees are going to get access to all this amazing high-end food, versus your warehouse, which is a little bit more edgy. Maybe you're bringing in outdoor food vendors or something. There's that element. But what I'm finding is with virtual events, you're not getting that to your attendees. So maybe your attendees aren't going to notice some of these things, but these are questions that you should ask to double check that you are getting everything you need for your event. You're not paying for anything you don't, but you're just making sure you got everything you need, and they're not going to sneak up on you with some hidden fees, because this is one of the big takeaways I emphasize in this video is a lot of platforms might advertise one price, but then you'll find if you go over on attendee numbers, or you need to add another breakout session, or whatever it is, that those costs will change. Now, I'm a service provider as well in events. I understand if you're adding a whole nother session and that requires more staff to run the production of your session of someone talking, sure, that's going to have an added cost. But the difference between saying I want 1,000 people to watch and 1,500 people to watch, that's different. And you just want to make sure that you're not going to get nickel and dime down the road. Let's get into my 6 go-to questions, which I do want to add caveat here. I am the queen of questions. I love asking questions. And so these are not the only 6 questions I ask my virtual event platform vendors, but these are my 6 go-to ones, and ones that I'm noticing other people might not be asking, or they might be not top of your mind when you're prepping for a meeting or a demo with a virtual event platform. So these are my 6 go-to questions that you should add to your list of questions you want to ask your virtual event vendor. My first question for your virtual event platform would be, does it include streaming? Now, what does that mean? I already talked about it a little bit, but I think about your virtual event platform like your venue. The streaming is like your audio visual. And so just like at in-person events, sometimes that is included with the place that you go. Sometimes they have required vendors you have to use, and sometimes the vendor is open to anybody. The same thing happens with virtual event platforms. Some of those virtual event platforms include the streaming cost in their overall cost, meaning if they are using YouTube or if they're using Zoom to stream your event through their virtual event platform, that cost is included in the total cost you're getting charged for the virtual event. Now, what I'm finding and why I like to ask this question is because a lot of places aren't including the streaming. They are telling you, oh, you can use YouTube, you can use Zoom, you can use Vimeo, but they are not providing you any of the infrastructure to actually do the streaming, produce the stream. And so when I say produce the stream, I mean make it look good. If you want to have lower thirds, if you want to have a slide come in, if you want background music, that's all things that you would need to do on your side or hire a production team like myself to come in and do for you. And so I'm seeing more and more platforms, at least right now in this current time where we're still, virtual event world is so fast and quickly growing. A lot of people just tried to figure out how to build a beautiful system that you could then just embed Zoom links into, or embed Zoom video or Zoom webinar, or embed YouTube links into. And that's great. But I do think the future is looking for these platforms that are going to allow us to do more, to do the production side inside the virtual event venue. Now, it's something I haven't seen happen, but that's something that I'm hopeful for in the future. And my next question, before you even start talking costs, you could just ask, on their platform, is there a limit on attendees? One of the beautiful parts about virtual events is your reach is way bigger than when we had to do all of our events in person, which I think, again, there's things I miss about in-person events, but so the benefit is you're reaching more people than you ever could with your content, but you want to make sure this virtual event platform has the capacity to accommodate that increased reach. So for example, I was on a Pod Save America Zoom call and they broke Zoom. And when I say broke Zoom, they reached the limit that Zoom had at the time. This was several months ago, but there was 10,000 people. That is the max that you can have on a Zoom webinar. And so they luckily had already had a contingency plan, and Zoom does have abilities for you to stream to YouTube. And so they immediately were just telling people, if you can't get on the link, they emailed everyone, if you can't get on the link, just go and watch it on YouTube. But they broke Zoom. They hit the capacity. So if you're someone who thinks you're going to get 10,000 people or more, these are questions you need to ask when you're thinking about using Zoom as a streaming partner or as your virtual event venue, as both, whatever it is. But I also have found other virtual event platforms, those thresholds are a lot lower. Sometimes they are going to quote you a different price if it's 500 and below versus 1,000 to 2,000 versus 2,000 to 3,000, 3,000 to 4,000. It really differs. And so this is where in your conversations with your virtual event vendor, I would make sure that you're asking about capacity. What are the maximums you can have watching a main stage program? What are the maximum people you can have at your virtual sponsor booth? What are the maximum people you can have in a breakout session? Speaking of maximum people, my next question would be, is there a backstage for your virtual speakers? Usually these virtual event vendors are using a different platform to actually stream your event, but I have started to see some pop out and they already have it. Or one vendor that I'm using is StreamYard. I'm using that both to produce my stream as well as my virtual event venue to push it out to YouTube. So I guess YouTube, you could say, is my event venue, and then I'm using StreamYard to get there. But the beauty of StreamYard is it does have a backstage. It has a visual where I can see if speakers have arrived early. I can see them without having them on the live stream. Now, negative of StreamYard, I can't talk to them because if I talk to them, then I'm putting them in the stream, but I could chat them. And so here's where I've used Zoom at times to act as my backstage so I can physically look and speak to my speakers before we send them onto the main stage by sending them to another Zoom room. One of the things I'm finding with a lot of these virtual event platforms is they haven't really thought through some of that streaming side of things. So if they are telling you, oh, your speaker can immediately just talk on our platform, it's great, just like Zoom, just ask them, is there a backstage? Is there a place that you could put a staff member just to double check that people's video looks good, lighting look good, they're nice and framed up in the frame, their audio is great. These are just little things that are going to help you. These are just little things that are going to help you increase the quality of your virtual event. So my next question is, can you add graphics to your video? So for example, the two I would kind of play off each other. Again, some use this as their actual virtual event platform. Some use them just as the streaming mechanism, is Zoom versus StreamYard. And so for Zoom, it's very easy to just show slides or show faces. But if you wanted to do a lower third as a single person with if you're someone who has limited technology knowledge, you cannot then create a lower third graphic to put over the speaker while they're talking. Granted, you can use a streaming engineer who can easily do that using OBS, or Open Broadcast software, or another system, but you yourself cannot do that. Now, there's platforms like StreamYard where I'm a little more limited, meaning I can't play certain videos of certain lengths and things like that, but me as myself can put lower third graphics, can spotlight one person, have two people on screen, two people plus slides, one person plus slides. It enables me to be a producer all as a team of one. So my question about graphics is really important if you really care about the presentation. And for your brand guidelines, if you always have to have lower thirds with people's formal titles, that's a question you want to ask your streaming partner, because I've seen some virtual event platforms and streaming platforms that say one thing, and then when you actually get into trying to do it, it's a whole nother story. So make sure you ask about graphics early on when you're vetting your platform. This next one's a little bit of a technicality, but I love it with virtual event platforms. There's so many that are out there that are coming up with their own titles for different sections of their virtual event website. So say it's like a conference, virtual conference site, and they have main stage, sponsors, they have networking lounge, all these things that are great. You want to make sure that the titles and what they're calling each section matches up with your event. Similar to how at an in-person event, you would have your own signage. Maybe you'd nickname a room instead of calling it Ballroom 1, you're calling it the big tent, like a circus theme or something. So you want to know, can you actually change the name of all those sections? Could you change main stage to auditorium? Could you change networking lounge to the connection lounge? Could you change viewers where it says the word viewers for any of your attendees? Can you change it to attendees? Some platforms I found, easy peasy. They have no problem switching and customizing it exactly to what you need. Other ones, I found they faltered. They said, oh, it's the default, we have to use that. Or, again, back to my other point, there's an added cost to change that. So if some of these elements are important to you, just make sure to bring that question up in as early as possible, especially when you're doing a demo or having your initial meetings with your virtual event vendors. And my last and favorite one is cost. How much does it cost? Now, I'm not a fan of sales. I don't love it, even as a business owner. It's probably my least favorite part of my business. It feels great when I get them, but the process of doing them, I have moments when I love trying to sell what I do and other times where I just wish I could wave a magic wand and people would just know what I was doing. But same thing with virtual event platforms. They're new, they're fun, they're flashy, so you're gonna get a great sales pitch of all the things you can do with it. And so my favorite question is just to always, okay, how much does it cost? And then to even break that down farther with those questions we asked earlier of, okay, here's how many participants I'm thinking about. Here's how many breakout sessions I'm thinking about. Here's a main stage I want to do. I need to have access to the platform a day or two earlier for rehearsals. You have all these things just to start breaking down the actual cost, because I've found with these virtual event platforms, the cost varies so much that it really is easy to go down the rabbit hole with one that you think is going to have everything you need, and then it's way out of your budget. Or you think it's really inexpensive, you're so excited, you're saving so much money on this compared to an in-person venue, and then you start getting nickel and dimed along the way as your event slowly comes to fruition. So really just start talking about cost early on and see what works for you. I wouldn't say discount someone because they are on the lower end of the spectrum, meaning they're less expensive. I also wouldn't rule out ones that are on the upper end of the spectrum. Your needs are different. And so I found, like with one client who's a nonprofit client, we're working on the lower end of the spectrum with a virtual event platform because that works for them. Is there more of a lift on our side as the event organizer? Sure, but it works for them. On another one, we need it to have a very robust speaker exhibitor layout, breakout sessions, all this educational and learning conference. We need a more robust system. Therefore, that justifies the higher price tag. But you just want to make sure you're getting everything you think you want, and you're not paying for anything you don't need, and you're making sure that you don't get taken advantage of later on. And those were my 6 go-to questions when it comes to virtual event platforms. I will put this in a checklist form, so I'll link to my website below. If you go in LinkedIn, I'll give you a free checklist so you can have this for any time you're vetting a new virtual event vendor. And as always, I'm Logan Clements, freelance event producer. This has been another installment of my favorite tips and tricks when it comes to event planning and running your own business. Looking forward to talking to you guys again next week. Bye!